All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a deeply shocking event that perfectly illustrates the massive disconnect between rigid banking rules and rural realities. We talk so much about the rapid digitization of finance, right? But today, we're looking at what actually happens when those modern digital-first policies collide head-on with severe poverty and a total lack of formal education. We're starting with a truly visceral and heartbreaking story. This is Jitu Munda. He's an uneducated tribal man from Odisha's Kianjar district, and he took absolutely unthinkable measures just to prove to his local bank that his sister had passed away. When banking officials repeatedly asked him for proof of death and complex legal documents that he just couldn't comprehend, Jitu felt he only had one undeniable piece of evidence left: her physical remains. So he literally walked 3 kilometers under a scorching 30-degree sun to deliver them.
And you know what's truly astonishing here? This entire ordeal, this desperate act of digging up a grave, was all to claim a relatively small bank balance of roughly 19,400 rupees. That was money his sister Kaudara had saved up from selling oxen. To the massive banking system, sure, it's a minor deposit, but to a grieving family living in rural poverty, that money is an absolute lifeline.
Section 1. A shocking cry for help. When bureaucracy meets desperation. To really understand why this happened, we have to look at the sequence of events. Jitu said it himself. Out of frustration, I dug the grave and brought out her skeleton as proof of her death. This highlights a profound communication breakdown. When the bank told him that either the account holder must be physically present or proper legal heir documents must be produced, it all just got lost in translation. For a man who cannot read or write, phrases like legal heir certificates simply don't mean anything. He took the bank's demand for physical proof quite literally.
Section 2. The Rules of Succession, Banking Guidelines versus Ground Reality.
Okay, so here is the absolute crux of the problem. If an account has a nominee, claiming the funds is pretty straightforward, right? You just provide a death certificate and an ID. But because Jitu's sister died without naming a valid nominee, the account fell into a much more complex category. Jitu was legally required to produce a formal legal heir certificate to access her funds. Now, the bank wasn't being malicious here, they were just following standard procedures to protect the depositor's money from fraud. The real issue is the procedure itself.
Section 3. The Bureaucratic Maze. Getting an Odisha legal heir certificate.
Let's look at what this actually takes, because it builds into an insurmountable wall for someone without formal education. Getting this certificate isn't just walking into an office and asking a quick question. No way. It is a multi-step bureaucratic maze. You've got to get a formal death certificate, apply at a local common service center with multiple proofs of residency, wait for a revenue officer to issue a public proclamation, and then, if there are no objections, wait 30 days for the final issuance.
And the kicker? It's largely digital. To even get started on the Odisha e-district website, you need a valid email address, a mobile phone to receive OTPs, and a secure password just to begin the registration. I mean, imagine asking an illiterate tribal farmer, who doesn't even know what an email is, to complete this step. It's a massive, almost cruel hurdle. And it gets worse. The application itself demands navigating these complex drop-down menus in English. Oh, and you have to upload photos strictly sized under 250 kilobytes. It perfectly exposes just how impossible this digital-first task was for Jitu. A system designed for efficiency in a major city becomes an absolute labyrinth out in the village. The local police inspector who intervened really hit the nail on the head. He pointed out that Jitu had absolutely zero concept of what a legal heir or nominee meant. The bank staff spoke the language of strict policy. Jitu spoke the language of survival. This wasn't a case of fraud at all. It was just a tragic, avoidable miscommunication that stripped away a family's dignity. Section 4. The Systemic Disconnect, a widespread crisis in tribal farming communities. Zooming out from Jitu's specific case, we see this is actually a massive, systemic issue across southern Odisha. Recent academic research from the European Economic Letters shows a staggering 74% of smallholder farmers report severe difficulties specifically related to loan and banking documentation. Basically, the smaller your farm, and generally the fewer resources you have, the harder the bureaucracy hits you.
So we're looking at a perfect storm of institutional barriers here. Beyond just confusing forms, these communities often lack formal land titles, which means they can't get secured loans. They suffer from limited bank branch outreach in these remote areas, incredibly low financial literacy, and a severe digital divide.
You can't just mandate an online form if the community doesn't even have reliable internet or digital literacy training, right?
And the consequences of this are stark. When you look at tribal districts like Koraput, Rayagada, and Malkangiri, they consistently lag way behind the state average in accessing institutional credit. While the Odisha average for credit access sits at 52%, a district like Malkangiri is down at just 31%. It proves that formal banking is simply not reaching the people who need it the very most, keeping them trapped in a cycle of poverty.
Section 5. Closing the Gap. How Jitu's story was finally resolved.
Let's get back to Jitu. It is honestly incredible how fast bureaucracy can move when it's under a public microscope. Once the shocking imagery of Jitu carrying the skeleton went viral, the impossible suddenly became possible. Within 48 hours, the police intervened, the government magically fast-tracked all those 30-day certificates we talked about, and the bank settled the claim. The public outcry was so intense, it even prompted Chief Minister Manji to order an official administrative probe to prevent this from happening ever again. And in a rare moment of institutional empathy following all that intense scrutiny, the district administration stepped in to offer some real support. They provided an additional 30,000 rupees from the District Red Cross Fund as immediate, much-needed assistance to Jitu and his grieving family. So what is the big takeaway from this explainer? Well, policy frameworks like digital certificates and strict succession rules absolutely exist for a reason, to prevent fraud. We get that. But when these policies are applied blindly, without considering the ground-level reality of the people they're supposed to serve, they inadvertently exclude and punish the most vulnerable citizens.
I want to leave you with this thought. As our financial systems become increasingly digital, streamlined, and complex, what fundamentally must change in our institutions? How can we ensure that no one else ever has to carry such a tragic, heavy burden just to be seen, heard, and understood by the system? Think about that. And hey, thanks for joining me on this explainer.